want to talk you guys through dividing polynomials when the divisor, that's the part you divide by, is a binomial. So you have a polynomial and you're dividing by a polynomial with two terms. I have an example that's all worked out for you guys, and I'm going to have you write your steps in your own words, but I'll talk you through what's going on. First thing is you make sure that the polynomial that you're dividing has all of the x's from the most to the least in order. I have x to the third, an x squared, an x, and then no x, just a constant. So everything's here. If there were any missing exponents, variables, then you would put a 0 as a placeholder. Then I'm dividing by 2x minus 5. So to start this division, you set 2x minus 5 equal to 0. And that's what's going on here. If you set 2x minus 5 equal to 0 and solve for x, then you find that x is equal to 5 over 2. It's easier if you leave it as a fraction and don't write it as a decimal. So then you write your divisor, well, the number, on a little shelf. So this goes here. Next, as I said, you make sure that your polynomial is in order of degree from highest to lowest, and then you write the coefficients and the constant, just the numbers. You separate, here we've got 2 and -3 and -21 and +51. So those are the numbers that are here. And you can see there's a little dashed line. This is separating the coefficients from the constant. So all of these values have x's, and the 51 does not. All right, so this is how you set it up. You put a little dashed line, and you put a summation line. We're going to bring numbers down and add. So this is like for totals. Okay, then you bring your first number down. So you bring down the 2 and write it under your line. And this 2 will multiply by the number on the shelf. So 2 times 5 over 2. So I'm multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2. So I just got 5. The 5 you put on the line to the right. Then we'll add. So this box right under here, we add these. So I have 5 over 2 on the shelf. I brought my 2 down. I multiply. I get 5. I write that right here. And then I add these. -3 plus 5 is +2. Plus 2, I multiply times the number on the shelf. So I have 2 times 5 divided by 2. And I still get 5, just like I did last time. And then I add. -23 plus 5 is -18. I'll multiply by the number on the shelf. -18. So I will divide by 2, that's -9, and multiply by 5, that's -45. And I write that right here on the line to the right. And then I add 51 plus -45, and I get 6. The 6 is a remainder. So my polynomial did not divide evenly. I have a remainder. That's why we have this separated. Then, because I'm dividing by a fraction, wait, not ready for that part yet. When I divide, I started with 2x to the third minus 3x squared minus 23x plus 51, constant. But I divided by 2x minus 5. This has an x also. So I have x to the third divided by x. When I write my result, I am down by 1x because I divided. So now I'll put my x's back in. This is why you have to make sure they're in order, because we're only using numbers. So I'll put x squared. It's one fewer. It'll always be one fewer x than what you started with. And then plus 2x, and then minus 18, no x. This is just a number. And your remainder is over here to the side. Because the number I was multiplying by from my divisor is a fraction, if number on the shelf is a fraction, then we will simplify the result by dividing by the denominator. This is because on the shelf we had 5/2. So this 2 I then used to reduce my polynomial result. When I reduce, I find that I have x squared plus x minus 9. And notice I don't change the remainder. Don't change the remainder. I only reduce the polynomial. If the number on the shelf is not a fraction, then you don't reduce it. It's only if it's a fraction on the shelf. You divide the polynomial by the denominator. All right, here's my final answer. I have x squared plus x minus 9, and then I put plus 6 because this is a positive 6. And I write 6 over what I divided by. So I have remainder over divisor, which is the binomial that I started with. So write whatever you need to write on this so that this makes sense to you and you'll know what to do when you're doing them on your own. I do have several examples to do with you, so let's start that. This first one, there's no remainder. Step 1, make sure that your polynomial is in order from most x's to least, and that there are no gaps. And then set your divisor equal to 0 and solve for x. This number will go on the little shelf. Then all the coefficients and the constant that are in the polynomial we're dividing, I write here 3, -8, +11, -14, and I separate the values that are coefficients from the constant, the number that doesn't have any variable. To start my division, I bring down the first number, 3, and any numbers that are under this line, except for the last one, I multiply by the number on the shelf. So 3 times 2 is 6, and I write 6 to the right on the line. And then I add. -8 plus 6 is -2. Once it's under here, I multiply by the number on the shelf. So I have -2 times 2 is -4, and I add to 11, get positive 7. And I multiply by the number on the shelf. 7 times 2 is 14. I write that to the right on the line, and then I add. Negative 14 plus 14 is 0. That's why it says here remainder is 0. I need to put my x's back in. I'll have one fewer because I divided by an x. So now I only have x squared. So I can write this polynomial. When I put the variables back in, it'll be 3x squared minus 2x plus 7. And I don't need to write my remainder because it's 0, but you can write plus 0 over what we divided by, which is x minus 2. That's your answer. Here's another example. X to the fourth plus 9x to the third minus 4x minus 41. The first thing we do is check and make sure these are in order from most to least with no gaps. And when I do that, I see that there's no x squared. So I will put 0x squared when I write all my coefficients in the constant down so that I have a placeholder and all of the exponents are represented. Then I set this divisor equal to 0 and solve for x. So I'll subtract 9 and I find x is equal to negative 9. That's what I'll put on the shelf here. When I write my numbers out for my polynomial, I'll write 1 because there is an x here. There's just not a number by it. So that's 1x to the fourth. I'll write 1 and 9 and 0 because there aren't any x squareds, and negative 4 and negative 41. I separate the negative 41 because it doesn't have any x's. There's my summation line. Bring down your first number, multiply by the number on the shelf. 1 times negative 9 is negative 9. Write that on the line to the right, and I add. 9 plus negative 9 is 0. And I multiply. 0 times negative 9 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 times negative 9 is 0. Negative 4 plus 0 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 9. Negative times negative is positive. And 9 times 4 is 36. And I add. Negative 41 plus 36 is negative 5. I need to put my x's back in. This will be x to the third because I started with x to the fourth and I divided by 1x. So I can write my answer as 1 x to the third plus 0x squared plus 0x minus 4. And I have a remainder of negative 5. So I'll put minus 5 over what I divided by, which is x plus 9. It's not necessary to write the zeros in. You can. You can also not write the zeros. This is equivalent to x to the third minus 4 minus 5 over x plus 9. Either way you write your answer is correct. I have 2 more examples to work with you. Here. We'll do this one first. Well, these are for you to do. So here I have this one. Go ahead and hit pause and turn this back on and I'll have it all worked. And you can check yourself and make sure that you're ready to start practicing on your own. So hit pause. I've worked this one out. You are missing an x term, so I put in 0 for a placeholder. I solved 5x minus 3 equal to 0 and found that x is equal to 3 over 5. I wrote in my coefficients and my constant for the polynomial I'm dividing. I have 5, negative 3, 0, negative 5, and followed through the same process that I've explained a couple times. So I have 5x squared plus 0x plus 0 and minus 5 over 5x minus 3. Because the number on the shelf was a fraction, I simplified my polynomial, but not the remainder, by dividing by the denominator. So this polynomial answer can be written as x squared minus 5 over 5x minus 3. Another one here for you guys to do. Again, hit pause, work through it, and check in just a moment when you're finished and see that we agree on the answer. I set the divisor equal to 0 and found that x is equal to 5. That's the number on the shelf. I double checked to make sure that I don't have any missing terms and that my polynomial is in order to be divided, and it is, so I didn't need any placeholder zeros. And I followed through the process we've been practicing and found that my result is negative 3x plus 7 with 0 remainder.